If you have a strange or scary story you'd like to send in to the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. Hey Raven, I had a story that I wanted to share from my babysitting days. I had been babysitting since I was 12, but it started out with just my siblings. When I hit 15, I started babysitting for other people and, at the time, was making decent money for it too. Being the oldest kid of 5, I was pretty used to kids and all the shenanigans they would get into, so it rarely bothered me. There was this one family that I started babysitting quite regularly. One Saturday a month, sometimes twice. Their parents had some sort of tournament on those days, and from their words, it was pretty boring, so they didn't want to take their kiddos with them. And since their mom knew my mom, she asked to have me watch them. They paid me $50, so I certainly wasn't complaining either. So I started watching them sometime after I turned 16, all the way up until I turned 18. They had 2 kids, Taylor, who was a high-energy and creative 8-year-old boy, and Beth, who was the exact opposite, quiet and shy. Both of them were very fun and sweet kids, and I always had a blast watching them. On this specific Saturday, my friend Monica was going to be staying the night with me, and I had completely forgotten about having to watch them. I asked if she could tag along, and they agreed. Monica and I were very much alike. We both babysat and had the same personalities, so there was really no concern about it either. Now we got to hang out and make some money for half the work before going back to my place for the night. I was used to these nights being longer, with their parents not getting back until 10 or 11, which really wasn't a problem for us. The kids were usually zonked by 9, so I usually got an hour or so to myself, which meant an hour for Monica and I to do whatever until they got home. Their mom, Sandy, usually had dinner prepared by the time I got there, and the kids were just sitting down to eat. Sometimes she meal prepped ahead, and we just had to heat it up. Or, occasionally, she would have pizza delivered. When Monica and I got there, the kids were already in the kitchen finishing up their dinner. I was talking to Sandy and introducing her to Monica. She let me know of a few new things going on in their home, such as to let the dogs out in the front yard because the back slider needed to be fixed. Just little reminders like that. After the rundown and telling the kids bye, they were out the door and we were left with the kids. We made ourselves a small plate for dinner and ate with them, talking about how they've been and what they wanted to do for the night. As expected, Taylor opened up to Monica immediately and gave us a play-by-play of his day, while Beth was a little quieter, but also being talkative. She seemed to really like Monica when she complimented her rabbit hair clips. Once we all finished eating, I washed the dishes while Monica took them to the living room to watch some TV for a bit. Afterwards, we would go back and forth between playing a board game and TV, depending on how distracted the kids were, or if their notorious satellite dish went out. Sometimes it would just cut to a blue screen or static, and we had to wait for it to come back. Those were the times they seemed to really rely on me for the entertainment. We finally got through our game of apples to apples, and they said that they wanted to watch a movie. After a little disagreement between the kids, we decided to watch whatever movie was currently playing first, because it was on some TV channel, and then we could watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles disc that they had. I think they found an old season of the show somewhere, and Taylor was obsessed with it. Taylor found himself sprawled out on the recliner, Beth was sitting on the floor with her blanket and stuffed animal, and Monica and I were on the couch. It was always funny to me because Taylor could practically quote all the movies they had, while Beth liked to quietly sing along to any of the musical parts. It kept them fairly distracted while the two of us just talked through the night. I guess that it had been a long day because Taylor ended up falling asleep about an hour into the movie. Beth was still awake, her hands holding up her chin as she watched the show intently. We were still content with what we were doing, and in fact, were pretty well distracted to the point that we didn't notice the signal starting to go out on the TV. Sometimes it starts as just freezing and jumping forward in the show. Then we might get the blue screen. But it didn't click in my head until I heard Beth's familiar little voice. She was singing quietly, but when we looked over at her, the screen was blank. Just the floating little no signal box. But Beth's singing was not what I was used to hearing. It was usually full of life, and even silly sounding. This was low, like she didn't want anyone to hear, and almost monotone. The shadows watch, they always do. Monica and I just looked at each other, confirming that we both heard that right. After confirming that I wasn't crazy, I looked back at the still blank screen and Beth, still staring at it, like she was watching something. I tried to get her attention by saying her name or asking her what she said, but she didn't respond. She didn't even react like she heard me. I grabbed the remote to turn off the TV, and as weird as it may have seemed, there was nothing on. So why would it have done anything? But for some reason, it did. And she looked back at us and asked why we turned it off, saying that she was still watching it. Her voice back to the normal, bright, and childlike way that I was used to. I asked her what she was singing, and she looked at me confused. She claimed that she was never singing, that she was watching her show and asked me to turn it back on. I stared at her for a few moments and then slowly turned the TV back on. To our relief, it had come back on and appeared to be playing normally. She smiled and thanked me and then turned back around, fixating on the show again. Monica and I just looked at each other confused for a moment and then would glance back at Beth. Part of me hoped that she would do it again, but then I was also thankful the rest of the night went on as normal as it could be, with Beth being completely oblivious to how much she had just freaked us out. After another hour or so, we got both of them to their bedrooms, giving us free reign of the living room. That's when we started talking about Beth again. We both heard her say that, but we had no idea where it came from. She'd been watching, like, some animated Barbie show. It certainly wasn't something that would have been in. We even debated on if we should tell Sandy, but decided against it. What would we even say? Hey, your daughter said something creepy while staring at a blank TV, and then she denied it. I don't know if I would have believed it myself. So, we finished our night, and when their parents came home, I told them they were great and that everything was fine. I continued to babysit them for some time, but that never happened again. I would even randomly bring it up to Beth, and she always gave me a weird look like I was crazy. But I wasn't alone that night. Monica was there, and she heard it too. So, whatever it was that night, whether Beth just heard that somewhere and wanted to sing it, or if something was trying to communicate to her through the TV, it succeeded in sufficiently creeping me out that night. I've been working in retail and grocery stores for quite some time. At the time of this story, I was working in the produce and deli department at a pretty popular grocery store based in the Midwest. The job was fine, and I really didn't get much interaction with customers outside the normal, hey, good morning type thing. It was typically in passing, or while I was stalking something that they may have been browsing too. I also preferred working the mornings because it was less chaotic. But there was one day I worked where I had the most interaction I have ever had with a customer. And the best part is that at only 4 feet or so, they creeped me out the most. It was pretty early in the morning, and I had been stalking and checking the produce. Depending on the day, we may check them throughout and add more where needed, but the main refill and checks I did in the morning. It was a Wednesday because we had just got our truck the day prior, so we had a lot of fresh stuff, including our fruits. I had filled out the apple display in their neat pyramid-like display and had moved over to the bananas. If you've ever worked in any type of grocery store, you know the bananas go fast, so I overstock those. After finishing both of those, I took my 15-minute break, and that's where it all began as I headed back with my cart. There in the front, by my well-organized apples, now stood a young girl who couldn't have been more than 9 or 10, holding 2 of the apples. She was wearing what looked like a school uniform. She had a dark blue collared shirt on, and a matching blue plaid skirt. I thought that it was odd because, based on the time, school would have already been in session, so she would have been late. But I thought maybe she had an appointment or something. Maybe her parents had to stop here first and then she would be going to school. I thought nothing of it after that, and I went back to my work. I started organizing and stalking, but I heard someone sighing and mumbling. I looked back a few times and saw that it was coming from the same little girl, who now had an arm full of apples. I thought it was odd, but I wasn't going to get into it with a kid, so I just let it go, and thought to myself that I would fix it after she was gone. I went back to what I was working on when I reminded myself of the kid and turned to look again. This time, she'd been working on 2 separate piles of apples. There was the main stack of them, and she cleared out the 2 bottom corners, and had started putting apples into each. But one corner had 2 apples, while the other had a large mound of them. I didn't want to see her completely undo all of my work, and since no adult had approached her yet, I decided I would figure out what was going on. I approached her with a smile. Being an older male, I didn't want to startle her. I stayed on the other side of the apples and said, "Good morning." She looked up at me emotionless and then went right back to the apples. She would pick one up, hold it in both hands, and close her eyes. When she opened them, she would sigh again and toss the apple on the larger stack. I asked her if she was lost and where her parents were, but she didn't even acknowledge me. I was about to say something else when she finally spoke up. She asked if I worked there, and I confirmed, and then she looked back down at the apple in her hands and said, "They're all wrong." I asked her what she meant. They were a specific type of apple for that season. There was no way that they were wrong. So she tried to clarify, if that's what you want to call it. "They're rotting from the inside. Can't you smell it?" I halfway laughed because it sounded silly. But when I did, she looked up at me offended. I apologized and assured her that they were all good because they were all brand new. I then tried asking about her parents again, and she stopped me. She said that her mom had sent her to get apples for her and her brother's lunch, but that they had to be perfect. "The last ones were wrong and Thomas got sick. I will not let it happen again." Something about the way she said that made my hair stand up. What did she mean by they made him sick? I tried to confirm that he had an apple that made him sick, but she wouldn't answer, and instead berated me with more questions. She held the apple in both hands again, eyes closed, and asked if I had checked every one. I tried explaining to this child how we inspect our produce, and she said I was a liar. She held up an apple again and said that they were all rotting, and if you don't check them, you won't see what's growing in there. I know I gave her a confused look, but she didn't help the matter. She held the apple up to my face. "Things grow in the dark. Bad things. They wait until you bite down. Thomas didn't believe me either until he bit down. You should have seen his face. What the hell was this kid going on about? She sounded like a full-grown woman complaining to me about the lack of choices in apples. Why was I being berated by a child, and what made her think that these apples were rotting from the inside? I tried to ask her to explain, staying calm so I could just get a better understanding, but then she went on about things growing in the dark while you slept. She used mushrooms as an example, saying that they grow in your lungs while you're sleeping, and that was why her dad was still in the hospital. And like an older woman saying, "I told you so," she said, "They didn't listen when I said the mushrooms were wrong." I was sufficiently creeped out and confused. Rotting from the inside? Mushrooms growing in your lungs? None of it made sense. I thanked her for letting me know and told her I would tell my manager, and motioned that I would be right back. I walked away, looking back a few times to see her still sorting all the apples. I went to the back and got my manager and told him about what had just happened. He thought it was amusing, but I asked him to just come out and listen to this kid, and hopefully we could find her parents. But as I walked him to the apple display, the girl was gone. The 2 apples that had been separated were gone, but the pile of apples in the other corner still remained. I explained again to my manager that the kid claimed these apples were bad. He told me the same thing that I had said, that they just came in on the truck, and then asked me to put them back as they were and we would just move on. I agreed and started putting them back, but something was nagging at me. Why was this kid so adamant that these apples were bad? I tried holding them, seeing if maybe they had a soft spot. I even looked like a weirdo and tried smelling them like she said, but I couldn't smell anything. So I did something that I hoped I wouldn't regret. I took my box cutter that I had on me and cut into one of the apples. All over the inside, it was riddled with holes. Brown, rotting holes. What the hell? I grabbed 2, 3 more, and I cut all of them open. All of them seemed to be rotting in some way on the inside, but the outside looked entirely fine. I put all of the apples that she separated into one of the boxes that I had as well as the ones I cut open. I took them back to my manager again and showed him the ones I cut open. Whatever, I'll pay for them if I have to. He looked speechless and probably annoyed that I proved him wrong. We ended up taking that whole display of apples down. We cut the rest of the apples the kid picked out, and every single one of them was bad. How the hell would she have known? I don't know the details of it, since that's over both myself and my manager, but I do know that we basically had to return them to our supplier and explain to them what happened. I believe they told them we just had several customers return them for being bad, though. We didn't have an issue like that since, or at least no one complained, and I never saw that kid again. I'm still at a loss as to how she knew, and it kind of creeps me out. She was so adamant about it, like it was completely normal. Now, I can't even look at apples the same way, and if I ever get a craving for them, I just go with the pre-cut ones. Don't even ask me about the mushrooms. After nearly choking on one in my Alfredo, I couldn't help thinking about her comment of them growing in your lungs, and now I'm honestly just terrified of them. So, I guess, thanks, kid, for a new unfound fear of produce. I can never look at apples or mushrooms the same way again. Hey Raven, this is a short-ish story about something that happened to me and my girlfriend a few weeks back. More my girlfriend, though. I'm not the best storyteller, and this isn't comparable to some scary situations, but it stuck with me. I'm 21 from the UK, and I live in a, well, sort of nice-ish area. with kids who run about wearing balaclavas and thinking they're Pablo Escobar, doing God knows what to piss people off. I can't judge, as I wasn't the best kid and was always up to mischief, but not like the kids these days. So my story starts as me and my girlfriend were just chilling at home, and we decided, hey, we haven't seen our friends in a little while. Why don't we both go see them now, as they were asking, so we agreed. And I left with her, and she got in the car to pick up her friend. I walked around the corner to see my friend also. Less than a 2-minute walk. So I arrive at my friend's house, we catch up. About 15 minutes goes by and my friend asks me if I wanted to smoke with him. I say yeah, and he gets to it. My phone died as he did this, but I thought, it's okay, I'll just charge it in a second. Soon as this happens, my girlfriend, who is halfway through pregnancy, calls my friend through Instagram. He answers it, and instantly I'm hit with static like glitching audio, and all I hear is, "Help, come quick, lads in the park with knives." My heart sank, as she is pregnant with our soon-to-be daughter. I panicked and I didn't know what to do. But in an instant, I just grabbed the biggest kitchen knife out of his drawer and put it down my pants. And I know what you're thinking. Soon-to-be dad, smoking and carrying knives. Let's not go there. I'm a very nice person who likes to unwind from time to time. Nothing crazy and no partying or drinking, just a chill sesh in a secure, safe environment. Anyways, as I'm running to the park, which is about 5 minutes away from where I am, I notice my girl's car parked outside of our house. She had left and drove home. So I met her at the window with her friends in the car, and they all looked shaken up and white like ghosts. I asked what's going on, and they told me that there were a few lads waiting behind her car for around 10 minutes, while her friend was getting ready to come down and meet them. She said the lads were acting shady and that they were only a few meters away. They kept looking and pointing towards the car. She locked the door and waited for her friend. They then went to her driver's side and banged on the window, saying, "Hey, can you help me?" To which she responded, "What's going on?" "There was a man in the park with the machete, and he held us up and asked where we were from and what we had on us." My girl told them that she would ring to come and help, and they insisted no, they shouldn't ring me and wanted them to stay with them. She rang me regardless, and that's when they were acting all weird, saying, "Oh, it's okay, look, there's my mom over there coming to get me." But no one was there, though. Weird, right? So, as I've been told the situation as I'm at the car window, I see two lads walk around the corner towards the car, and both of them had balaclavas on in black. Her friend says from the back seat, "That's them." I took my hood down, showed my face, and shouted "yo" at the lads. They came to an immediate stop and put their hands up for some reason. I got angry and went in on them, telling them to basically F off from around the area, and told them that my girl was pregnant, and that they had scared her. I then shouted out, "You effing about with knives, eh?" And as I said that, I showed the handle of the knife that I had tucked into my waist. They immediately fled and started running from me. Now, all the girls are a bit shaken up, and I'm getting called an idiot for doing what I did, but was thanked. But I didn't have to do what I did. I agreed. We dropped her friends back off, and we were circling around the area to get to the two different houses of her friends. We saw the two same lads walking about, and they were ducking behind cars, probably thinking we were looking for them. They saw us drop off one of her friends at her house, and then they knocked on her friend's door. They told her that they didn't want any issues with me, and for nothing to happen to them, and that it was all just a big prank. I mean, come on. Doing that sort of stuff when you know it's a car full of girls, that's not funny. And I knew deep down it was bigger than that. What if she didn't ring me to come? Why didn't they want me there? Why did they want them to come help them with something if it was just a prank? What was the motive? What would have happened to them if they had gotten out, and what if they actually had the knives? I mean, they had the balaclavas, after all. I'm glad that I did what I did, and glad that my girl and her friends are okay, because they could have been trying to rob them, or even worse, actually just hurting one of them, including my unborn daughter. Thank you, Raven. I love your work and listen to your stories at work all day long, 8 hours a day. Sorry this ended up being long and not that interesting, but it stuck with me, and it's all about the what-ifs. What if they hurt my girl and my daughter was harmed? I couldn't have lived with myself if I didn't react as quick as possible, and I'm glad that my girl knew better than to leave the car. Howdy, Raven, and thanks again for this channel. Funny how this stuff can make some people feel uneasy where it makes me feel more normal. So, great to have a place to share our experiences. These stories also make my workday more enjoyable. Thank you. I wanted to share a compilation of small experiences that happened in a house we used to live in. Although they aren't terrifying, they still make you go, The first experience was my oldest daughter's experience, who was around 10 at the time. She needed me to put some polystyrene cream on a boo-boo at bedtime, so I brought the box in. I keep things in the box if they are greasy, and took the tube out. Squeezed some on her cut and put the cap back on, put it in the box, and took it with me to the bathroom to put it away in the drawer. A couple of minutes later, my daughter calls me in to tell me that she had just heard a bang on her floor, and when she looked, the polysporin box was on the floor in the middle of her room. Empty at that. How did that happen? And how was it so loud when the box was empty as well? Weird, right? The next experience was one my younger daughter, around 8 years old, had not too long after, maybe within the next week. So my oldest daughter and I were in my bedroom trying on high heels, like many young gals enjoy doing with mom's shoes, when my youngest comes in and very quietly sits on the bed and doesn't say anything. So we say hi and ask what's up. You see, this kid is normally loud and comes booming into most rooms and just blurts stuff out. She seemed off that day, though. When she started to talk, she showed me the 2 toys in her hand and said that they started moving on their own while she was playing in her room. Being the silly Billy that she is, liking to play tricks on people, I pressed a little more for details. I'm a total believer, but I just wanted to hear her out and watch her reactions. So she took me in her room, and she showed me how the car started flashing on its own, and driving back and forth on her shelf, and that the keychain basketball was spinning around in circles. She swore that it was true, but I still needed more proof. So I told her that it could be a child spirit just checking her toys out because they are neat, hoping to soothe her a little. She then began to cry, worried that the spirit might break her toys, and then she refused to sleep in her room. The reactions were very real, and I believed her at this point. To this day, she swears that it really happened. The next one happened to me probably a year later. The kids were playing in the backyard with their stuffed animals and dolls, and had gone in for a break, so left their carefully placed animals set up for whenever they returned. The only stuffed animal that was out of place a little was a stuffed dog that was laying down on its side at the altar, waiting for his bride to arrive. The whole setup, with flowers and all, was very cute. I didn't bother standing the dog up, but did notice that it was laying down while everything else was carefully placed. So I go in the house with them and begin to do some housework. But as I passed the door to go outside into the backyard, I noticed that the dog was now standing up. It was one of those things that catches the corner of your eyes, and then you need to do a double take. I knew that that dog had been laying down. I took note of it. So me being me, I had to go and explore. And did I ever feel the energy from something else standing right there, or had been there right before me. I'm one of those weirdos, a cool one, of course, that can feel and see energy. It was very apparent that someone of very high vibration had been there. I'm close with the celestial realms, so maybe. And I just had a weird happening 2 nights ago as well, but at my current house. It's a 165-year-old farmhouse with a barn, so I'm sure there are a lot of energies around here. I was outside talking on the phone at night around 9 p.m. As I was going to get into my tent. Yes, I love nature so much that I sleep outdoors as long as it's possible. I started to see a whitish figure or shape that looked misty and glassy, and it started moving towards me. So I told my friend and went into the tent, but could totally feel someone there as I zipped it up. Such a creepy feeling. It was in there with me for a bit, and then I had to leave. It's not the first time I've crossed paths with entities in this house, and I'm sure it's not the last. It does make for some interesting experiences, though, that's for sure. So that, my friends, was a collection of some creepy and scary kid stories. Stories involving kids that are creepy and scary. This one was kind of all over the place. Creepy kids saying things, which is the pretty typical way I do these. The one with the store and the babysit, but then there was also the one at the park with the creepy kids in the balaclavas claiming they had knives. It's creepy in a different way. And then what now? A paranormal one is what I meant to say. And then a paranormal one where the kids are experiencing creepy things. I wanted to mix this one up a little bit, kind of just give it a different flavor of creepy kid stories, I guess, if that makes sense. I didn't want them all to just be like, the kid was being creepy. 2 kid being creepy, 1 kids being absolute nuisances, and then 1 paranormal stuff with kids involved. So, thought it would be interesting. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. If you did, please do let me know by hitting that like button. That'd be awesome. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, please also consider subscribing. That would be most appreciated. You can also leave me a comment down below the video with pretty much anything you want to say. I will most likely respond to it. I'll at least give it a heart and a thumbs up. I typically respond, but sometimes I just kind of don't have the mental strength. I'm tired. I'm just tired. I mentioned that in my community post. It's just been a long week, so I'm just kind of physically exhausted. But it's okay. We will be okay. Yeah. It's already November somehow. I don't know how that happened, other than the calendar goes in chronological order, so. You know, Chronos being time. Yeah, don't know why. Of course the calendar's in chronological order. What else would it be in? Silly. Okay, hang on. Random thought. If you rearrange the days of the calendar, wouldn't it still technically be in chronological order because that's the order it's going to go? Like, if I said tomorrow was March 5th, and tomorrow came and we all just agreed that it was March 5th, wouldn't that technically mean that March 5th is chronologically after November 2nd? Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the stories. Yeah, you can also join Patreon memberships to get early access to content like this. That's appreciated. The coffee link, KOFI, down below in the description, is where you can search for the 3 posters I now have for sale. That's right, 3. I mentioned 3. There is a 3rd one up on the page, so check it out. Also will be signed and numbered, like always. So, yeah. You can listen on other platforms like Pandora, Spotify, Apple, Audible, all them. And I think I've said all I can say. Hope you all have a beautiful weekend. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that we are loved, okay? I mean, we are, right? Till then, remember that you are loved. You are valid. You are important. You're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and of course, sleep well.